Did you know that with just a simple drone setup, the right settings and a few simple techniques, you can create jaw-dropping cinematic footage? If you're a beginner or simply upgrading from your first drone, in this video I'm going to show you the only drone filmmaking setup you'll ever need. Gear, settings, techniques and color grading your shots, all breaking down with no unnecessary fluff. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to capture stunning aerial footage and color grade it so it looks straight out of a movie. Let's get into it. Hi, I'm European Filmmaker, and in just 5 years I went from zero to paid music video DP and colorist, and I'm here to hand you the tricks I wish I had on day one. Today we are diving into drone filmmaking with practical tips to level up your aerial shots. Let's begin with gear. First, you need to pick the right drone for the job. If you already own one, perfect. If not, aim for a model under 250 grams, so you can fly without extra licenses in places where heavier drones are restricted. They are lightweight and compact, easy to transport and quick to set up. My go-to right now is DJI's Mini series. I fly Mini 4 Pro, it's reliable and its footage looks great straight out of a camera for most projects. And if you want the latest and greatest, the Mini 5 Pro just launched with even larger 1-inch sensor and improved image quality, so check it out. For client work, I recently bought the Mavic 4 Pro. To fly it legally here in Europe, you need to pass the right exam and get the pilot license. So if you need more flexibility for color grading and want footage that stands out on paid jobs, the Mavic 4 Pro is my pick. Yes, there are models in between, but these two models are my choices for work and for everyday flying. My other tip is to choose a controller with a built-in screen instead of one that clamps your phone. I used the phone setup before, but mounting the phone and plugging in the cable out in the field is a real hassle. A dedicated screen is just quicker and more convenient. Another thing to consider is the bundle you buy. I chose the simplest option, a single battery Mini 4 Pro kit. One battery is enough for me, and between locations I recharge it with a power bank or a car charger. If you expect to log serious flight hours, step up to the Fly More combo. It adds extra batteries, spare props, cables and a carrying case, so you can stay in the air longer. Now let's talk accessories, what's essential now and what you can add later as you level up. If you buy only few things, get a decent SD card and ND filter. ND filter basically gives you that smooth motion blur you see in cinematic videos, especially if you fly a mini series drone. These drones have a fixed aperture that limits your exposure control. In bright daylight, you have to crank the shutter speed way up to expose properly, and the result is an over-sharpened plasticky look. To avoid that, you need to follow 180-degree shutter rule, which means using double the shutter speed of your frame rate. For example, if your frame rate is 25 frames per second, set your shutter speed to 1/50th of a second. But to hit that number, you need the right ND filter. They are measured in stops, ND2, ND4, ND16 and so on. On an extreme bright day, use ND32 or even ND64. For evenings or early mornings, ND8 or 16 is a good choice. You can buy ND packs straight from DJI, but there are reliable other brands like Freewell or Polar Pro. Just don't go for cheap random glass you find online. It will degrade your quality of your footage. Now for the SD card, I recommend 64 or 128 GB. Make sure it can record 4K and look for at least V30 and A2 rating on the card. Of course, it is best to check the compatibility list on the official DJI site for your exact drone. Besides SD card and ND filter, I recommend few more things. First, get DJI Care Refresh. Drone flying can get expensive and you don't want to buy a new aircraft right away after crashing a brand new one. The insurance is a must-have in my opinion. Second, pick up a landing pad. When you can't set the drone down on a clean surface, a pad saves the day. Once you build more experience, you can try launching and catching by hand, but it's risky and not recommended, so do it at your own risk. And if you still want to try it, I'll show the proper technique later in this video, so stay tuned. And I have one more extra accessory I would recommend. It's a sun hood for your RC controller. If you fly in bright daylight, it's usually hard to see the screen unless you find a shade. I use a 3D printed one from my pal, fellow creator Vladislav. If you're interested, let me know in the comments and I'll ask if he can print more. Just before launching your drone, you need to do a few things first. The first one is checking your local rules. Flying drones is like driving a car, there are rules that must be followed. But the main idea is kinda simple. Don't fly over people, especially crowds, and respect other people's privacy. Don't fly above 120 meters, keep the drone within visual line of sight, and stay away from restricted areas like airports, military sites, border zones, and similar places. Every country has official maps where you should check your route before flying, and because each country is different, you should always look it up first. For example, here in Europe we have to register any drone that carries a camera and put a sticker with registration number, but check what applies where you live. The next thing you'll want to check before flying is weather. Strong wind or low temperatures can damage the aircraft or make you lose it completely, so you should always know your drone's limits. You can find all the necessary information on the official DJI site, so be sure to check that out. There are also some handy forecast apps for pilots, and I'll link my favorites in the description. And when you think you're ready to go, hold on. To squeeze the best out of your drone and your footage, we need to do one more thing. Check the settings in the Fly app on your controller. Let's run through them quickly together. While we are in the home screen of the app, make sure to download and install all the newest updates and firmware for your drone and controller. This is necessary for your drone to operate properly. Now, let's go to the settings by pressing 3 dots in the top corner. Our first page is called Safety, and this is where we set up our safety features. The first thing to set is the obstacle avoidance. It's a system that provides 360-degree sensing around the drone, using multiple sensors so it can detect and avoid obstacles in all directions during flight. You can choose how the drone behaves when it approaches something, brake or bypass. I leave it on brake, but you can test what works for you. Just keep in mind that when the drone is in sport mode, obstacle avoidance is turned off automatically. Next, set up Return to Home. There are 2 modes, Optimal and Preset. In Optimal mode, the drone figures out the safest and most efficient way back in real time. It might curve around and change height to dodge obstacles and save battery. While in the Preset mode, the drone goes straight up to your set altitude, flies straight home at that height, and then lands. I leave it on Optimal, it's smarter and easier to use. In the AR settings, you can turn on a few helpful overlays for safer flying and landing. For example, Home Point adds a floating H symbol, so you always know where your drone will return. The route feature draws a green line that shows the exact path back, and the aircraft shadow places a virtual shadow on the ground, which helps with precise landing even on moving surfaces. I just leave them all on, so I've got full awareness and control. In the Flight Protection tab, you can set limits for safer flying. Here in Europe we have a strict limit of 120 meters, so I set max altitude to match the local rules. Additionally, you can set max distance or how far your drone can fly from the home point. You can set it to unlimited, but don't forget that you should keep the drone within visual line of sight. Sometimes you'll be asked to calibrate the compass. It's pretty simple. Follow the on-screen steps and rotate the drone as shown. I do this when flying in a new area or after an update, to keep the orientation accurate and avoid wear drifting. If your drone acts strange or feels inaccurate, you can also calibrate the drone's sensor system that read movement and orientation, so the drone stays stable. There's one more important setting to check in Advanced Safety tab, and that's the drone's default behavior when it loses signal. By default, it's set to Return to Home, but in some rare cases you should switch it to Hover or Land. For example, if you are flying under a bridge, set it to Hover. Otherwise, if it loses signal, it could rise and hit the bridge. Just don't forget to set it back up after that. Now let's open the control page and tap the Gain Expo setting. This one often gets overlooked. This is where you fine-tune how the controller sticks feel in all three speed modes. Max horizontal speed controls how fast the drone moves forward, backward and sideways. Ascent speed is how fast it climbs. Descent speed is how fast it comes down. You can keep this a bit lower for smoother drops. Max angular velocity is the yaw speed, or how fast the drone rotates. Lower values give you smoother pans. Smoothness softens the start and end of your yaw moves. Raise it to avoid harsh starts and stops. This gives you that smooth ease in and ease out feel. Brake sensitivity decides how quickly the drone stops when you release the sticks. I keep this higher for safety. Expo changes how sensitive the sticks are around center. For smoother control, reduce Expo a little so small stick moves are gentler and easier to hold steady. If you went too far and the drone feels too lazy, bring Expo sliders back up. On the same page, check the gimbal settings too. Increase tilt smoothness so your tilts ease in and out. Experiment and find the balance that works best for you. Now go ahead and tune per each mode. Make Cine the smoothest, keep normal balance, and leave sport mode more responsive. Do a quick test, watch it back, adjust and repeat until it feels right. Now let's move on to the camera page. First thing I change here is the color profile. And to get the most out of the footage, I always choose the flattest option. On the Mini 4 Pro, that's D-Log-M. It's not a true log profile like on bigger cameras, but it gives more data and dynamic range than normal. Log looks flat and desaturated, but that's a good thing. We'll bring the color back in the grade later in this video. To see a more natural image while flying, you can enable Color Display Assist. It applies a temporary LUT to the screen only, and it doesn't bake into your footage. Next, I recommend turning on the histogram. It's a small graph of exposure, shadows on the left, highlights on the right. The taller the bar, the more of the image at that brightness. Use it to see if the image is too dark, too bright, or nicely balanced. Another useful feature is grid lines. They help you frame and keep your subject centered while you fly. For landscape shots, place the horizon on one of the thirds for a balanced composition. I often keep the sky in the top third and the land or water in the lower two thirds. The center dot or the X grid helps keep the subject locked in the middle during orbit shots. Always set your white balance manually. This keeps colors consistent while you fly. If you leave it on auto, the image will shift during the flight and it won't look good in the final video. For bright daylight, aim for around 5600 kelvins, for overcast day about 7000 and for sunset around 3200. Use the screen as your guide, and if you want the sunset warmer, nudge the white balance higher. Usually the 5600 is a solid starting point. Most consumer drones shoots way too sharp by default, and the next two settings can help dial that back a little. I set sharpness and noise reduction to -2, and if I need more sharpness or noise reduction, I can always add it later in color grading. In the Storage tab, choose your SD card. You can also format it right from this menu, and if you had a bad day and forgot your card, newer drones have a bit of internal storage to save you. The Mini 4 Pro has 2 GB, just enough for a couple of quick shots. That's it for the settings menu. Now, from the main camera view, we need to set our frame rate, resolution and exposure. First, change the mode from auto to manual. Frame rate is your personal preference. For a more film-like look, you can go with 24 or 25 frames per second. But if you want a smoother, sharper look, 30 is a good choice. For slow motion, use 60 or even higher frame rates. Here's a little trick I use. I often shoot at 30 frames per second, and in the edit I slow it down to 25 or 24. It gives me a smoother, slightly slower feel. Now that we've locked in the frame rate, set your shutter speed using the 180-degree shutter rule. If you're at 30 frames per second, set the shutter to 1/60. As you can see, the image is way too bright, and that's where an ND filter comes in. Go for stronger density filter on the bright daylight, something like 32 stop, and these should do the job. For ISO, keep it as low as possible for a clean image, and raise it only when you need to, in low light conditions. The little double M sign on the screen is your exposure indicator. In simple words, when in manual mode, the mm value gives a reference to the ideal exposure according to the drone's internal metering system. I usually try to keep it at minus 0.6 or 0.7 to protect the highlights from clipping. Use that together with a histogram to nail your exposure. And finally, let's get to the fun part – flying the drone. If you're just starting out, find a safe place first. Open flat fields are great while you are still learning. When you are ready, double press and hold the power buttons on both the drone and controller. Once they connect, check the satellite lock and wait until you have at least 10 to 15 satellites. GPS navigation needs multiple satellites to pinpoint the drone's position and orientation. Fewer satellites or weak signal can make the drone lose accuracy or even control. Next to the satellite symbol, you can also check your drone's connectivity with remote controller. In the bottom left corner, you can tap the map icon to see the small live map. It shows the home point, your drone's position, heading and flight path. Tap it again to expand it to full screen. You can check your route and the return to home line here. Then tap back to return to the camera view. And these two numbers show your current altitude and drone's distance from the home point. Okay, so once you have a strong signal, it's time to take off. There are two easy ways to launch. The simplest is to press and hold the auto launch icon on your screen for a few seconds. The drone will rise to about a meter and hover. The method I use more often is to push both sticks down and inward at the same time. That just spins up the motors, and then I lift the drone myself by pushing the left stick up. I recommend testing both methods and pick the one you like the most. And as I said before, there is a third option which is not recommended, especially if you are just starting out: launching and catching your drone with a hand. But when you gain enough experience and there is no other options, you can try it. Once again, I do not recommend launching or catching a drone by hand. If you still choose to do it, it's at your own risk. First mistake beginners make is launching from an open palm. That's a red flag. The drone isn't stable and it can tip over and injure you. Don't do it this way. Instead, grip the body with your thumb, index and middle fingers and raise it above your head. Check the wind. If it's blowing towards you, turn around. With your other hand, press and hold the auto launch icon and wait for the motors to spin up. When you feel the drone lift into the air, slowly release and step back. Keep the props well away from your face, hair and clothing, and avoid strong wind or crowded areas. Catching the drone is very similar. When you are ready to land, bring it above your head and let it hover. Switch to sport mode. This will disable obstacle avoidance so you can land on your palm. Raise your arm and use the same 3-finger grip to catch the body from above. With your other hand, hold the left stick all the way down until the drone enters the landing procedure. Keep your grip steady, wait for the motors to stop, then lower the drone. Be very careful and do this only in an open space well away from people. Better yet, don't do it at all and use the flat ground or launch pad. Now let's learn how to handle the sticks the correct way. First of all, the remote controller isn't a Game Boy, so pinch each stick with your thumb and index fingertip together instead of mashing it with your thumbs. This grip gives you finer control and much smoother moves. Most importantly, make smooth and gentle stick movements to avoid abrupt and jerky motion. The further you push a stick, the faster or more extreme the drone's movement, so start with light inputs, especially as a beginner. If you're just starting out, first get comfortable with the basic moves. Let's try what all these sticks and buttons do. On the left stick, up and down controls throttle, your altitude. And left or right controls yaw, rotating the drone on its axis. On the right stick up or down handles pitch, pushing the drone forwards or back, while left or right handles roll, sliding it sideways. The middle switch is for changing your drone's speed. Most of consumer drones has 3 modes: normal in the middle, slow or cine on the left, and sport mode on the right. While you're learning, I suggest you use normal or cine modes first. For me, I use the sport mode only to get to the location. The circular button on the left is your return to home button, which is used to make the drone automatically fly back to the last recorded home point. You press and hold the button until the remote controller beeps, which initiates return to home process. The drone will then go up to the preset return to home altitude, turn around and fly back to the home point to land safely. On the top left edge of your controller, you'll find the gimbal tilt dial. It sits under your left index finger. Roll it forward to tilt the camera down or back to tilt up. Right next to that wheel is the big record button to start and stop video recording. On the opposite side, there's another wheel for zoom and a photo button. You can also customize both wheels and the 2 custom buttons on the bottom in your settings to fit your workflow. If you have trouble learning the basics, you can find all detailed lessons right inside the Fly app. Tap Academy on the home screen and all the tutorials you need are there. And if you're still having troubles understanding basic controls, DJI recently introduced Flight Simulator, where you can practice all day long. It's quite fun, you should check it. Once you've nailed the basics, it's time for some fun moves. One of my favorites is the orbit shot. Here, the drone flies a smooth circle around the subject, holding the altitude, radius and speed, while the camera stays locked on the point of interest. The result is a clean cinematic sweep with the subject perfectly centered as the world spins around it. All you have to do is point both sticks to opposite sides. It takes time and practice to nail the center perfectly, but this one becomes muscle memory fast and gives you a smooth orbit. Now find the dial in the upper left corner of your controller. This one controls your gimbal tilt. It lets you adjust the camera angle in the flight and unlock more interesting moves. Now tilt the gimbal all the way down to the ground, then, while flying forward, slowly roll the dial upward. This smooth motion reveals the space or subject in front of you, and it's called a reveal shot. One of the simplest and very effective shot is a top-down. Just point the camera straight down at -90 degrees and fly. You'll capture the scene directly below from a bird's eye view. This angle shows patterns and symmetry you don't see at eye level and often gives you an abstract look. It works great for landscapes, coastlines, fields, streets and architecture, any place with strong texture or shapes. Keep the camera straight down and slowly move forward, backward or sideways for a clean, flat overhead view that makes familiar places look new. Capturing a stunning shot doesn't always have to be complicated. Sometimes a simple fly forward or gentle rise is enough to reveal your establishing shot. Look for depth in your shots. Keep something close to the camera like grass, rocks or tree branches so it moves faster across the frame than the background. That speed difference instantly adds depth and scale. Stay a bit lower and closer than you think and slide left or right to exaggerate the effect while the subject stays steady in the center. Once you are more confident with your skills, try flying through tight spaces or gaps to get even more interesting shots. Of course, always watch your prop clearance and wind gusts. Safety goes first. Next, use natural light. Your best bet is early mornings and late evenings when the sun is low, casting long shadows and adding depth. The light is warm and soft. Avoid pointing straight into the sun and also avoid having it directly behind you. Both can wash out the scene. Go for side light instead. Let the sun hit from an angle so it shapes the landscape. Watch how the shadows fall and use them to add natural contrast and texture. For composition, I always recommend using your frame guidelines. The rule of thirds helps you compose the shot. For landscape shots, place the horizon on one of the thirds for a balanced image. If you want to highlight the land, put the horizon on the upper third. If the sky is more important, use the lower third. If you are focusing on a certain object, use your center dot to pinpoint the exact position. Today's drones are equipped with a ton of cool features, so I wanna go through some and then I'll show you the best tactical feature I use all the time to get the perfect shot. The most popular and most advertised feature is Active Track. You can select a moving object or yourself on the screen and the drone will follow. It's fun, and if you film yourself a lot, it's a great tool. Choose Auto and it will move on its own with preset moves like circle, helix or simple tracking along your route. Just keep the line of sight and watch for obstacles while it flies. One of my favorite features is cruise control. It's a simple autopilot that keeps the current speed and direction without you holding the sticks. Great for steady straight shots or even orbits. I set a custom button for it in the settings so I can toggle it quickly. But my most used feature on DJI drones is waypoints. This lets you pre-program a flight path. You drop points on the map or while flying, and the drone will fly that route on its own. Each point can store altitude, speed, heading, gimbal tilt and camera actions like start and stop recording or take a photo. I'm not doing a full tutorial here, but for a simple mission, simply take off and tap the waypoint flight icon in the Fly app. Add points by pressing C1 button to pin your current position. Edit each waypoint if needed, set the altitude, speed, heading and gimbal pitch, and when you're happy, press go to start the mission and keep an eye on the drone in case you need to take over. Pin waypoints while flying for smoother moves and don't place them too close together or fly too fast between them. You can also save your mission for later, shoot the same path in the morning and then again in the low light. Keep visual line of sight and make sure your return to home altitude and battery are set for the route. If you're just starting out, explore the one-tap modes like Quick Shots and Master Shots. Quick Shots run preset moves like droney, circle, helix, rocket and boomerang. Simply mark your subject and the drone flies the move while keeping it framed. Master Shots string several moves into one take and can auto-edit a short clip in the app. Use these to learn angles and timing, then practice flying the moves manually. Now that you can fly and capture cinematic shots, let's take them to the next level with color grading. For color grading and editing, I used the latest DaVinci Resolve Studio version. If it looks too intimidating for you, I recommend checking my hour-long color grading tutorial first. This is where we turn that flat image into something pleasing to the eye. But before we jump into grading, I'll quickly show you how to slow down the footage for that softer feel. If your timeline is 25 frames per second and you shot at 30, you can slow down just a touch for a smoother look. Here's how. In the media pool, select your clip, right-click it and choose Clip Attributes. Under Video Frame Rate, change 30 to 25 and hit OK. Now the shot plays a little slower and it's ready to drop into the edit. OK, now let's set up the color management correctly. Open Settings, go to Color Management and set the color signs to DaVinci YRGB. Set the working or timeline color space to DaVinci White Gamut Intermediate. It holds more color than Rec 709 and even most camera gamuts, so you don't lose detail when you push shadows, pull back highlights or mix clips from different cameras. In short, more room to grade and consistent results across projects. Then select your display color space. This one depends on your monitor setup, but if you simply grade on your computer screen, select Gamma 2.2. If you have a dedicated grading monitor in dark environment, go with 2.4. In my case, I'll be grading on my MacBook, so I'll select Rec 709A. If this sounds confusing, I've already covered this topic in my previous videos, so go ahead and check them if you have any questions. So here I have 3 clips from 3 different drones, and we'll go through each one step by step. The first is the Lithuanian river shot on the Mavic 4 Pro in a proper D-Log profile. we'll go for a more vibrant and tiny bit cooler look here. First, we need to convert the log image to display color space Rec 709. I'll do it with 2 nodes on the color page. In the first node, drop a color space transform plugin and convert T-log to working color space, which in my case is DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. Then create a second node and convert that working space into proper display space, which is Rec 709. For gamma, I select 2.2. This should give us a nice starting point. I'll do my color grading between these 2 nodes. Let's create 2 more nodes in between and name them exposure and balance. In the exposure node, I'll adjust exposure using the HDR exposure slider. This is a more intuitive and smoother way to correct exposure. For the overall tonal look, I'll use the lift, gamma and gain wheels. For the balance node, I recommend switching the node to linear and adjusting the overall balance with the gain wheel. Again, this is more intuitive than using temp and tint. Now that we've balanced the image, I like to reduce sharpness. These consumer drones are way too sharp for my taste. For a more pleasing look, I'll add 1 more node before the balance nodes. In the Blur tab, drop sharpening by 1 point. Then add a native texture pop plugin. Set mode to advanced and color mode to Luma Chroma. Adjust tiny, fine, small and medium sliders. I like it to keep balanced. If I reduce tiny detail, compensate by adding fine and so on. Then simply adjust the overall strength until it looks right and clean. Now, let's give the shot some style. For this shot, I'll use the built-in DaVinci Film look. To feed it correctly, change the Out node. Instead of Gamma 2.2, set the CST to output Cineon Film log. Add 1 more node after it and apply the Codec 2383 D55 Film look from the Film looks folder. If needed, touch a balance node slightly to set the colors. Now, I'll add 2 parallel nodes for the forest and the river to create separation. For the forest, I'll use Color Slice tool to adjust the yellows. Refine the selection with the Highlight tool and Center tools. Shift the hue slightly towards green, darken a touch, and desaturate a bit. For the river, I'll use the HSL qualifier in 3D mode to select the water. Then use the matte finesse sliders to nail the selection. I'll add a little blur and denoise for a smoother blend. To give the river more pop, I'll go to the primary wheels and in gamma, pull red and green down a touch. Finally, I'll adjust the gamma wheel for the brightness. Let's add one more node and apply glow effect. Set the shine threshold all the way down and set composite type to soft glow. For a slightly warmer feel, add a warm color filter. Then use the global blend to control intensity. I'll set it around 0.4. I don't like how the yellows and greens are too saturated, so I'll put them back a touch. Now, add another node and create a circular power window. Stretch it like a regular vignette and invert this selection. Drop the prism blur effect onto this node. Nudge the blur and aberration sliders to taste. I keep it subtle here. The goal is to draw attention toward the center, not to distort the image. You can also add a light vignette and trim the overall effect with the global blend slider. Alright, let's move on to the second shot. This one is shot on the DJI Mini 4 Pro in D-Log-M. I'll use the LUT approach this time and I'll show you another method on the next clip. I'm going for a slightly warmer morning look for this one. First, create 4 nodes. On the last node, apply the official D-Log-M LUT. If you don't have it, simply go to the official DJI site, download it and drop it onto your LUT folder. I'll use the middle 2 nodes for balance and exposure. Speaking of exposure, we are already in a good starting point, but I'll tweak the overall tonal look with lift, gamma and gain wheels. For balance, I'll use the same approach as before, switch the node gamma to linear and use the gain wheel. Then I'll add one more node to adjust saturation. It looks a bit too strong for my taste, so I'll tame it down a touch. In the first node, I'll apply the same de-sharpening technique we used in the previous clip with texture pop effect. Now, let's give it a look. The DJI LUT spits out Rec. 709 Gamma 2.4, but the DaVinci Film Look expects Cineon Film Log. So we need to add a color space transform before the Film Look and convert Rec. 709 2.4 to Cineon Film Log. Now add one more node and apply the Kodak 2383 Film LUT. I'll use the 65 version this time for more warmer look. And to add even more warmth with some separation, I'll create a layer selection. Starting with the first node, I'll add a warm tone using the HDR global wheel. Now I'll add a layer node on top where we bring back the original shadows. For this I'll use the HSL qualifier in the luminance section. Raise the high slider until you've selected the shadows and use the highlight tool to check the matte. Soften with the high soft slider and fine-tune the selection. Then go to the Key tab and adjust the overall effect. I'll set it around 0.8. Now let's add one more layer node and do the same with our highlights. This time I'll use the low and low soft sliders to nail the selection. And keep the overall more subtle, around 0.4. This is how it looks before and after. Now let's add one more node for subtle contrast. Simply change the node's composite mode to overlay and lower the key output to about 0.15. It adds soft, natural contrast without crushing detail. Now we'll add a dreamy touch. For this, let's add 4 more nodes and create a compound node from them. Go inside the compound node by double-clicking it. I'll start with the last 4th node by adding the glow effect. Again, set the shine threshold all the way down and change the composite mode to soft light. I'll bring the global blend to around 0.35 and add a warm color filter. Now, in the first node, I'll simply reduce the sharpness by a few points in the Blur tab. In the second node, I'll drop the radial blur effect. It looks too strong by default, so let's reduce it to around 0.17. In the third node, I'll add a prism blur effect with circular power window, just like we did in the previous clip. Adjust these sliders to keep the effect subtle, then exit the compound node. Now you can go to the Key tab and adjust the overall effect to your liking. I'll keep it subtle around 0.4. Let's add one more node and drop in Cinematic Haze, one of the latest DaVinci additions. I'd simply recommend playing around with the sliders until you are happy with the haze, and if it feels too strong, you can always pull it back with Global Blend or in the Key tab. I'm almost done here, but I'd like to adjust the highlights a little and make the roll-off smoother. I'll use the custom curves for this. Gently shape the top of the curve until the bright areas look clean and natural. Okay, let's move on to the final clip. This one was shot in Iceland on the older DJI Air 2S in D-Log-M. This time I'll use a slightly different approach. Instead of LUTs, I'll use two free DCTLs, an IDT and ODT, to convert color spaces. Don't worry, I'll link them both in the description so you can check them out. In the first node, instead of a classic CST, I'll drop a DCTL. I'll select Air 2S DCTL to convert my D-Log-M straight into DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. For the out node, I'll drop the same DCTL plugin and choose the JP2499 DRT. It works like a color space transform but in slightly different way and gives me a more pleasing starting point. I'll set the output to Gamma 2.2. Now that we have a good base, I'll add 3 nodes between these conversion nodes and name them Balance, Exposure and Saturation. I'll adjust exposure with the HDR global wheel. Then shape the overall tone with lift, gamma and gain. For balance, same approach as before, switch the nodes gamma to linear and balance with the gain wheel. For saturation, I'll set the node's color space to HSV and disable channels 1 and 3. This lets me control only saturation with the gain wheel in a way that feels more natural and pleasing to the eye. For the filmic look, I'll use the Dehancer plugin. It has a bunch of film stocks and great tools inside. If you don't have it, use DaVinci's built-in film look creator. I'll pick a Fuji stock for that warmer evening feel and add a bit of bloom effect. After a quick tweak of sliders, I've got a nice base. Next, I'll soften that overly sharp drone look. Add one more node and use the same texture pop method we used earlier. Dial it so edges look clean. Now I'll tweak the sky color. Add another node and use the HSL curves. Go to the hue versus hue curves and select the blue range. Nudge it towards cyan. I like to use a broader selection here so I don't break the image that fast. One last thing I'd like to add is some split toning to the shot. For this, I'll do it after Rec 709 conversion node. This keeps the result controlled and pleasing than doing it in the white color space. You can use the built-in split toning effect or custom curves, but I prefer a DCTL from a company called Pixel Tools. It's much faster and more intuitive. I'll go deeper on that one in the future video, but for now, I'll simply add cooler tones in the shadows and warmer tones in the highlights, keeping mid-tones more neutral. For the final touch, I'll put the highlights down a bit so the sky is more visible. And that's the final look. As you can see, color grading can level up your shots big time, but adding some sound effects, atmosphere and music, this is what makes your shots epic. I'm using Upbeat. This is where you can find all the stuff you need to level up your shots, from sound effects to atmosphere and uplifting music. It's all there. Check them out, and if you like it, use my discount code for a slightly better deal. 5 years ago, I was where you are now, figuring it out one flight at a time. Today, you've got the same playbook. smart setup, smooth control, and a confident grade. From here, it's all reps and curiosity. So go, have fun, tell your story from the sky, and I'll be here to help you level up. See you in the next one.